I bleed blue and gray. I bleed it. I bleed it. Man, this being out here tonight brings back a lot of memories. It really does. Walking out here and seeing you guys out on the field. And this has been many years coming for me. And as I progress and take y'all down a little journey, you'll come to understand why this night is pretty important to me, and it has been for quite a while. So as I take you on this little journey, I want you to open your hearts and I want you to open your minds, because the story I'm going to tell you here tonight, I hope and pray to God that none of you ever experience anything like it in your entire life. I grew up right here in Carrollwood. I started playing football when I was 4 years old, and my entire life I had a dream that one day I was going to go to the big leagues. One day I was going to go play college ball. My whole life growing up, that was what I lived for and what I dreamed for. And I had that natural talent and that natural skill, and I could have gone and done that. And as we progressed right here on this field that we're looking at, there was that opportunity for me. It was right in front of me, right for the taking. But at some point during my high school years, I started to lose a little bit of focus, a little bit of that focus. You see, I was that guy at Gaither that everybody came to on Friday to find out where the parties were at. We would all meet up at the local McDonald's right here in Northdale Court, and we'd figure out where we were going to head out to, and a large caravan of cars would head out, going either to a house party or a field party. But I was that guy on Friday that they would come to when they wanted to know where that party was taking place over the weekend. I started to lose that focus. I started to make some wrong decisions. One night, my senior year, with everything that I wanted still in front of me, still within grasp, I made a decision one night that would change everything. It would change the course of my life forever. I grew up wanting to be a Florida Gator, guys. Got any Gator fans in here? Yeah, maybe not right now, right? It's all right. They're going to bounce back. They're going to bounce back. But I grew up wanting to be a Gator. And you know what? That opportunity was there. That opportunity was right there for the taking. But life is all about choices, right? And sometimes when you're a 17-year-old kid and you think you're bulletproof, you make choices and decisions that aren't in line with your purpose and your life and your future. And this one particular Friday night, some of these guys sitting up here in the stands will remember it like it was yesterday. I know I do. I would make a split-second decision that would change it all. One Friday night, we went to a party. Big fight breaks out at the party. I jump in the fight. During this fight, I hit another team. Didn't think anything of it at the time, right? We'd been there before. We had been in those situations before. We had been in fights before. But this time was going to be different. Because 3 days later, the sheriff's department showed up at my parents' house right here in Country Place with a warrant for my arrest. One of the teens that I had hit during that party on that Friday night had slipped into a coma. At that moment, everything in my life stopped. My hopes, my dreams, what my parents had dreamed of as they fed that passion that I had my entire life growing up, it all died that night on that beach from that one choice. To make a long story short for you, for that one night, that one split-second decision, I would be sentenced to 10 years in Florida State Prison. Here's what you need to understand. Nothing my parents, my coaches, my teachers, nobody had taught me in life had prepared me for the world that I was about to enter. I remember them coming into the county jail. My victim was in a coma for 3 months. I sat in the county jail waiting to find out if he was going to live or die, waiting to find out if they were going to charge me, if the attempted murder charge were going to stick, or if they were going to charge me with murder. After 3 months, I heard the best news I ever heard in my life. My victim had come out of his coma. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be standing here with you guys today. I'd still be there. One choice, one decision. I'll never forget them waking me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, telling me to pack my stuff. It was time. As they carried me out into the corridor, I had packed all of my belongings into a pillowcase. Everything I owned at that point in my life was in a pillowcase. I was 17 years old. I was scared to death. I had been for months sitting in jail, playing it out in my mind, what it was going to be like when I got to prison. Nothing that I thought about had prepared me. As they took me out into the hallway, there they were, a line, 100 inmates, shackled from head to toe, murderers, rapists, thugs. So I took my place in line. They carried us down to this big garage and they loaded us onto this big gray bus with steel mesh over the windows. And we headed off into the night. We had no idea where we were going. But we knew it was a far away from everything that we loved and everything that we held dear. You could have heard a pin drop on this bus as we drove through the night. Not a word was said the entire time. And as I sat there on that bus, I couldn't help but think to myself, maybe they're so quiet because it's 3 a.m. and they're all still asleep. Or maybe like me, they were worried about what waited on the other end of that bus ride. And after 3.5 hours of driving through the night, just as the sun was coming up over the trees, we arrived at our destination in a prison tucked way in the woods of North Florida. As they unloaded us off the bus, there was guys waiting along the fence, ready to welcome us to our new home. As we pulled up, I noticed a 20-foot tall fence with razor wire that blanketed it from top to bottom, so thick you couldn't even see through the fence. So even though we were there, what waited on the other side of that fence was still a mystery. But I started to prepare myself mentally as I unloaded that bus. I came prepared. I came prepared to fight. I was going to leave with the dignity that I went in there with, even if it meant putting my life on the line. See, I'd gone out one night and I made a choice to fight. Now I was in a place where I was going to fight and I didn't have a choice. I want to fast forward, y'all, to about a year into my incarceration. It had been a hell of a year. Pure hell that year. I had fought for my life on numerous occasions. Every day when I walked out of that cell, I wondered if it was going to be the last day. I watched people murdered and killed right in front of me. And I was scared to death. I thought about my friends and how they were going to prom and how they were going to graduation. All the things that I was missing that I should have been there enjoying with them. I thought about my parents and what I put them through. I thought about the fact that their dreams had died on that beach that night as well. And as I sat there in that cell, it was 9 p.m. and it was lights out time. And that steel door slammed shut on that cell, and I was sitting in the pitch darkness. So dark I couldn't even see a foot in front of my face. And in that moment on this particular night, the weight of the world came crashing in on me. As I sat there in that cell, I felt hopeless. I felt helpless. I felt like my life didn't have any meaning and it didn't have any purpose. What I'd been living for most of my life was what you're doing right now. And it was gone. It was gone. As I sat in that cell that night, I even thought about taking my own life. What did I have to live for? To a 10-year sentence to a 17-year-old kid seemed like a life sentence. I was 1 year into that 10-year sentence, and it had already been a year of hell. As I sat there in that night, I crouched down in the corner of that cell and I pulled my knees tight to my chest and I buried my forehead in my knees and I cried like a little baby that night. There was no light at the end of the tunnel in my life. And as I sat there that night, something hit me in that exact moment. It was something my granddaddy had said to me when I was a little kid. See, my grandparents, they owned a couple hundred acres just south of Tallahassee, and during the summer, I would go up there and I'd spend time with them, and me and my granddad would hunt, and we would fish, and we would just hang out together. My grandfather was a religious man. He would always, at breakfast time when I was up there during the summer, he would read the upper room, and he would read devotionals to us. But when I was your age, I had my own agenda. It all went in one ear and out the other. He would preach to me all the time. But I wasn't paying attention. I had my own agenda. But he said something to me that stuck one of those summers when I was a little kid. And it came back to me that night in that cell. My granddaddy said to me, he says, son, just promise me one thing. When you're at your darkest, when you're at your darkest moment in life and your back's against the wall and you don't feel like you have any way out, drop to your knees immediately and cry out for God. Amen. I believe there was a God. The scripture says in John 3:16 that God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, and that whoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. I believe that. And I had nothing to lose, so I took my granddaddy's advice, and I spun around on my knees, and I laid my face on that cold, dirty, concrete prison floor, and I cried like I've never cried before in my life. And I cried out to God. And I asked God to come into my life. And I said, God, I can't do this without you. I'm scared. I'm hopeless. And I need you to come into my life and come into my heart. That night, on that floor in that prison, everything changed in an instant. In that exact moment, the fear went away. I wasn't scared to walk out of that cell anymore. In that moment, the hopelessness went away. The regret went away. It all went away in that moment. And the communication started immediately. No, there was no burning bush that came and showed up in that prison cell that talked to me. No, there was no angels that came down and sat on the bunk to talk to me. But God spoke within me because that communication had started. And he said to me that night, he said, you're going to be here for a while. But when you're done, you're going to go do great things. And as you sit here tonight, you need to know that you are going to go do great things. God is going to make sure of it. He's going to prepare you to go and do great things. They may not involve football. But God's going to make sure it happens. He's going to prepare you for something. The other thing he shared with me that night in the cell was that there had been a battle going on for my life. There had been a battle going on for my heart. There was good and evil. There were two forces that were pursuing me. There's two forces pursuing you right now. In an instant, that night, everything changed. Over the years since that moment, I did 7 years on that 10-year sentence. And God was with me every step of the way. Every step of the way. I left this field at 17 years old. And I stepped out of those gates at 24. 20 years ago, I left this field abruptly, without warning, unprepared, all because of a choice. But you know what? It wasn't that night on the beach that changed everything for me. It was that night in the cell that changed everything for me. And it could change everything for you. God's been with me every step of the way. Some amazing things have happened to me in my life since then. And now I get to travel around the country and I get to tell this story. Because you see, here's what we all need to understand. Is that our stories, all of our stories, your life is going to have a story. But here's what you need to know, is that story is part of the big story. And that's God's story. But in order to do that part with your life, to have that meaning, I believe you have to have a relationship with God. I believe you have to take that step. I believe you have to open that door of communication so that God can have that presence in your life. Will y'all do me a favor? Will y'all bow your heads for me? God, I know you're here because I brought you with me. I take you everywhere I go. And God, my hope tonight is that those fellas that are sitting here that don't have you, that they're going to take you with them when they go tonight. If you're within the sound of my voice, I don't know what you're going through right now in your life. And I don't know what you're going to go through. But I know this. I know there's a battle going on for your life. And I know that God is pursuing you and He's pursuing your life. He created you for a reason. And He wants to show you what that reason is in your life. I'm not just talking to the football players. I'm talking to anybody and everybody in the stands that's within the sound of my voice right now. If you don't have that relationship with God, and you want to feel that peace that I felt that night in that cell, and if you want to feel that guidance that I've felt my entire life since that moment, then I want you to repeat this prayer after me. You can say it to yourself. You don't have to say it out loud. God, I need you to come into my life. I can't do this without you. I need your guidance. I believe you sent your Son to die on the cross to forgive us of our sins so that we would have the opportunity to live in heaven with you forever. God, I understand this is all just temporary. And God, I want to do the best I can while I'm here. In order to do that, I need you, God. I need you in my life, and I need to have that communication with you every step of the way. Take over my heart. Open my eyes so I can see and my ears so I can hear. And I pray all this in Jesus' name. You can open your eyes. If I didn't do that with you, I wouldn't be fulfilling my purpose. What I'm going to ask you to do next is going to take a little bit of courage. But God said, if I'm for you, then who can be against you? You see, it's not up to your mom and dad. It's not up to your parents. It's not up to your coaches or your teachers. That relationship with God, that decision was up to you. And if you made that decision tonight, just now, if you said that prayer to yourself, I want you to step out boldly and I want you to stand up for me right where you're at right now. Y'all can sit back down. I want you to remember this moment, because I remember it just like it was yesterday, and this is a big moment in your life. But here's what you need to understand, is making that decision only turns up the heat. Because you see, there's an enemy that came to kill, steal, and destroy, and he wants to mess up your life like he tried to do with me. But I can tell you right now, you can beat him, you're going to beat him. He's already been beat. But you're going to need some support. There's a club at this school called the FCA, and they can offer you that support. They can offer you that guidance. They partner with this team. You got an amazing coach. I can tell you right now. I know a lot about this coach. And he's an amazing, amazing person. He's got a heart for you. He loves you. More than just on the field, he loves you off the field. And guys, that's something special to have. Let me tell you, that's something special to have. You're going to need that support. If you made that decision tonight, make sure you see these guys before you leave, because they got some stuff for you. But I just want to tell you this. I want to leave you with one last thought. Something my granddaddy told me. Words of a wise man. For those of you that didn't make that decision tonight, just remember this. When you're at your darkest moment in life and your back's against the wall and you don't feel like you have any way out, drop to your knees immediately and cry out for God. Can I get y'all to bring one in for me right here? On three, Cowboys. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Cowboys!